the mustard. Here we are. Here we are. Welcome to the Backyard Professor live videos, live stream that's going to become a video, though you and our beloved live audience get us as we are, totally professional. We have a fantastic show for you tonight. Landon and Rebecca have been working their keisters off with fantastic guests. If you haven't been watching them this last month, you need to get with it. They are really starting to become dominant in the world of kick the apologist butt. That's the new name of the game. And tonight we are going to talk about, again, it is a subject that I have broached in my videos. I know John Dehlin has done so. I know Bill Rill and Radio Free Mormon have done so. And yet it never gets old because new angles appear constantly with the con. Tonight, we are going to talk about Joseph Smith's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth visions. Let's get this show on the road. Well, my goodness, with that introduction, you would think we're going to be alive and excited and well. How are you two doing tonight, Mormon-ish? Here we are, once more, having a ball.
Yeah, once more. Your intro always makes me want to do push-ups or something. Like, it's so invigorating. So.
Yeah, baby. Do a few, and then I'll do a few, and Landon will outdo.
All right, I'll be back. No.
Okay.
Peter, that's my job. I'm the host. I'll triple count for you so that we all do about 150 push-ups in about a minute. That'll impress everyone. All right, here we are, and it looks like we've got a good crowd. Welcome to everybody. Oh, I see my dear friend T.O. from Hawaii, and my other dear friend Tim Rathbone, and my other dear friend Radio Free Mormon, and my other dear friend Patty Cake, and my other dear friend Mark Chris. I mean, all of them. Peter Higgs, every one of these guys, Doug Vincent, Chris Murphy, Donna Donald, everybody is my friend here, as usual, because I believe in friends, you know. Heather Reddick, thank you for showing up. Wanda Anthony, how are you? Max George, good to see you. Chris Murphy, Radio Free Mormon, the man with the muscle. Not head, mouth. No, that won't. Anyway, yeah, the man. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to, build you up. I'm praised.
I don't know what that meant, Carrie.
I'm not sure either. Maybe we can edit that out.
I doubt it. We're live. Now Radio Free Mormon has one on me. Oh, no. Heather Reddick, good to Mo see ya. Good to see you. Donnie Lee Gringo, good to see you. Newton Lemos, marvelous, darling. Looks like the whole darn gang is here, which is always a delight. Mark Roach, good to see you. Captain Moroni. Folks, the Backyard Professor Live with Mormon-ish is so famous, is so popular, is so powerful, is so all-encompassing, inclusive of truth and light that even fictional characters like Captain Moroni show up. Now, come on, is that impressive or what?
We're speechless. We don't even know what to say.
Here, I'll clap. Yeah, they're laughing by now. So, okay, now, really seriously, tonight we're totally serious. Mm-hmm. We never goof off on this show, and because, of course, we have to be professional so that we can get the message across and so that everybody believes everything we're saying, except for one thing, we actually show the evidence for what we're saying. And that's what I love about having you guys on this show. You're such excellent researchers. Tonight's a great topic, Joseph Smith's first vision. Now, we are doing it because of the church essays. Now, is my understanding correct? You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't the church somewhat kind of backed off the essays now? I mean, they made a big whoop to do about, hey, we're gonna come out now. We're gonna be honest with our history and all. And now they're kind of backing off and changing them up, and they're not pushing them anymore. Am I reading those vibes right, you guys?
I don't know if they're not pushing them. I don't think they ever really pushed them. I think they just put them out there to say they had something that they could say, we put that out or we responded to that, and now they're leaving it behind. And but one thing we're finding is they seem to keep finding new angles to spin on it as people kind of call them on some of this stuff. So I think they're moving on and coming up with new theories that they can explain why some of these don't make sense.
Yeah. A Radio Free Mormon has said something deeply, deeply profound. In a surprising turn of events, Carrie will sober up over the course of the podcast. I can't believe.
What's the fun in that?
I mean, my own dear friend, Radio Free Mormon, is trying to convince everyone that I'm not sober, or that I am going to get sober, or something like that. I actually am sober. This is enthusiasticalism that everyone is seeing here, because I love having you guys on, because you do such tremendous work. So why don't we get started? We said hi to everybody. I see Fine Girl, welcome back. Appreciate you showing up too. And Marin Dameron and Crystal Christensen. I've got to mention a few people, it flatters them and they keep coming back. Radio Free Mormon, I don't know who he is, but he's around. So this is a good thing. Nikki McBee, thank you for showing up. Chris Murphy. Elisa Gallienne, yes. Thank you for showing up. Okay, we have said, Barry Richens. I got to say hi to Barry Richens. And incidentally, you Mormon-ish, Barry Richens would be a hell of a man to put on your program too. He has decades of great experiences, stories. So, and I'm going to put him on my show again too. Kel Stell, hi from San Diego, he says. Welcome. Okay, now that's enough. That's enough. We are done with the bull roar. Now we're going to show you the bull pucky from the church. Why don't we go ahead and get started, you guys? Let's talk about this first vision idea again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to, before we start, I saw several comments about what's happening in Cody. We just dropped episode 30 minutes ago. It's just 6 minutes long. It's an update on Cody. So anyone who wants to get that can go there. But
and your essay on Cody, Wyoming was exceptional. That was fun to watch. Yes.
So, but tonight we're here to talk about the first vision. And I got to say, in all the time that I've known Rebecca, I have never seen her so upset as when she started reading this essay.
This essay chaps my hide. I put up with a lot of gaslighting. I did for over 5 decades, but this essay, boy, they've taken it to a new level. So I'm going to try to control myself. But yeah,
no, don't. Hey, whoa. We're on the Backyard Professor Live. I command you to let her loose. Let her rip, baby.
I'm sure we'll see some of it. So, Carrie, if you want to pull up the slides.
Absolutely.
It's only an 1,800-word essay, which is amazing based on all the problems that they can solve all the problems in 1,800 words. But this is another one we're going to kind of read. And so if you want to go to the first one, I'll have you read it, Carrie. We've kind of gone to a little bit different. Anytime you see this little Moroni with a horn, That's the actual essay that we're reading from. So when we start reading through there, you'll know that that's the essay, and it's kind of italicized. So we'll jump in. We'll read the first 2 paragraphs, and then we'll watch Rebecca start throwing her shoes and stuff. So
awesome. I also want to point out the historical incredible idea here of seeing a Joseph Smith bearded in this first vision.
Yeah.
Now understand, and I was talking with Mormon-ish behind the scenes before the show, they might actually have an accurate portrayal here, because Joseph Smith wasn't 14 when he had this first vision. He wasn't even 15. He didn't even think about it until he was in his 30s. So this could be actual. So here we go.
Yeah, I think AI knows more than, than most of us do about how old he was when he actually had the vision. So,
Hey, AI art is awesome, man. I'm putting it in my book that I'm writing, and it's fabulous stuff. So, and Rebecca's going to be in the book, and Landon doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to squeeze him in.
Oh,
uh-oh.
So Joseph Smith recorded that God the Father and Jesus Christ appeared to him in a grove of trees near his parents' home in western New York State when he was about 14 years old. Concerned by his sins and unsure which spiritual path to follow, Joseph sought guidance by attending meetings, reading scripture, and praying. In answer, he received a heavenly manifestation. Joseph shared and documented the first vision as it came to be known on multiple occasions. He wrote or assigned scribes to write 4 different accounts of the vision. And this is not, when I was raised, you guys, as a teenager, and I went through all 4 years of seminary, we were told that this was actually one of the anti-Mormon arguments to try to confuse us. And who is the father of all lies and confusion? Satan himself. And so if anti-Mormons are saying, oh, there's 4 different ones, then that is Father Satan trying to confuse your poor, precious little Saturday warrior minds. And now we see this church essay saying, oh, hey, look, there was many different visions and accounts. However, like Rebecca has noted in her righteous wrath, they're gaslighting this thing. Actually, they're just coming out flat out lying so much in it, aren't they? So, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go to the next one and read the next one. This is where I want to see Rebecca's eyes glare as she.
Awesome. Hey, can we get her to read it out
very level-headed?
If you read it out loud, we could see your eyes spit fire, Rebecca.
Well, I just have to say, even the first sentence, everything in the first sentence is, very up for debate, right? Yet it's not this one, but the prior slide. Anyway, okay, let's move on to this one here. It says Joseph Smith published 2 accounts of the first vision during his lifetime. The first of these, known today as Joseph Smith history, was canonized in the Pearl of Great Price and thus became the best known account. The 2 unpublished accounts recorded in Joseph Smith's earliest autobiography and a later journal were generally forgotten until historians working for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints rediscovered and published them in 1960. It was a miracle. Since that time, these documents have been discussed repeatedly, over and over, in church magazines, in works printed by church-owned and church-affiliated presses, and by Latter-day Saint scholars in other venues. In addition to the first-hand accounts, there are also 5 descriptions of Joseph Smith's vision recorded by his contemporaries.
So why are you so mad about that, dear?
Oh, we're going to get into that, because he basically there are 4 visions that come that Joseph Smith himself either dictated or wrote. And obviously the one that he wrote would be the most important one. It's a first-hand account, nobody else involved. That would be the most important one. But there's basically 4 where he's either talking to someone and a scribe's writing it down, or where he was writing church history with a historian or a scribe, and they're writing down what he said. So that's the 4 they're talking about. And then there's 5 others that are by secondary accounts of people that said, oh, I heard him say this, and they wrote down or they wrote in their journal what he said as they were talking. So these are the 9 accounts they talk about. There's some others that we're going to introduce that maybe don't count as these 9, but still to us are fairly important that we're going to introduce into this. But when you go to the thing, the first thing that really upset us is, first off, how many of us have ever even heard of this, of all these accounts? Growing up, we all learned the 1838 account, which is the one that Joseph Smith put into the church history.
And in the missionary discussions.
Yeah.
Missionary discussions. All of us know this. The problem is that didn't happen until the 1900s. It was early 1900s before they started even pushing this first vision narrative. Prior to that in the church, most people had never even heard of the first vision, or they had it confused with other visions. So it wasn't until early in the 1900s that the first time it showed up in a lesson manual was like 1903. So that's the first time the first vision, which is we all hear it's the founding, doctrine. It's the thing it's the first discussion. It's the very first thing we teach as missionaries.
It's what shows we are the one and only true living church on the face of the whole earth.
It is.
Right.
It is. And so to us today, it is vital that this be true. But back in the early days, that wasn't the case. And we're going to talk about that. But one of the things that made Rebecca so mad was that sentence there where it says it was generally forgotten until historians working for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints rediscovered them. So it was the historians who rediscovered them.
Let's hear it for historians.
Let's talk about those church historians who found this. One important thing to keep in mind is let's go to the next slide. We've all heard the story. I think
gave it away already.
I think we all know the story of Joseph Fielding Smith and his scrapbooking. I know when I was 90, 2000, remember all the scrapbooking that everybody, all the Relief Society would go do scrapbooking. Well, this is probably where that came from.
Well, now listen up, people. I cut out my own dad's first vision too. So, so let's not just pick on Joseph. Yeah, I mean, it's too sacred to share. I cut the damn thing out. I'm just saying.
Well, this was one of the fun stories in the church because Joseph Fielding Smith was working in the church historian department, and he became the church historian and then obviously a prophet at one point. But as he's going through what's called Letter Book 1, I think is what it was officially called, but it was actually written by Joseph Smith. And as he got in there, he found this 1832 first vision account written by Joseph Smith. You would think he hit the mother lode. I mean, this is in the hand of the man, first-hand account
that he worships.
That's a song, in the hand of the man who. Yeah, I love it.
Not only that he worships, it's his great grandfather's brother or whatever.
We're talking. This is blood.
Oh, this is a historian. This is a vital record. So, what do you typically do when you find a first-hand account and you're the first one to find it? Of course,
go over it and rewrite it.
You cut it out. That's what you do.
All of us would have done that. What's the problem?
He read this and he said, "This can't be right."
Right.
And so he cuts it out and he puts it in the safe of the first presidency, locks it away so that nobody can find it. This is in the 1930s, 1940s that he locks it away in the vault, and there it sits for decades, with nobody ever hearing about this. Finally, church historians find it.
That's what it says here. It says it was forgotten until church historians working for the church rediscovered it. That's what it said.
And published them in the 1960s.
Published them in the 1960s. So we want to tell a little bit about this story behind how this was found.
That is not what happened.
Actually, what happened is Sandra Tanner.
The
Queen, Sandra Tanner.
Now, wait a minute. She wasn't Relief Society president at this time, was she? So her
was actually pretty much a new bride of Jerry,
very young
at the time. But her mother, and I think it was her aunt and her mother, I think, were looking at these different church documents, and they were looking through the church documents, and there's a publication called The Historical Record that was put out monthly by the church historian. His name was Jensen, back in the 1800s, late 1800s. And so as they were going through the historical record, they found this this section that talked about the first vision, and in it everything was singular. It said personage. It referred all to singular, and it was clear that they were copying from something that was an actual record, and it appeared that it had been written by Joseph Smith. Well, they got another copy that was reprinted just a couple months later, and when they reprinted it, they had changed everything. Personage became personages, and angel became Christ. They saw that the whole first vision had been changed when they reprinted the historical record. This caught Sandra Tanner's attention, and she brought it. She wanted to ask the question. Rebecca, you want to tell kind of what happened from that point?
Yeah, I just love this story. And I hadn't really heard exactly how Sandra was involved until, and I'm going to put on my librarian book club hat here, this book that came out, Lighthouse, Gerald and Sandra Tanner, Despised and Beloved Critics of Mormonism. If you have not read this book by Ronald Huggins, this just blows it wide open as far as what the Tanners were doing. It was just incredible. Their scholarship with very limited resources, what they did, they were absolutely brilliant. So Landon's absolutely correct. She just, something in her mind said, wait a minute, this does not work. And she wanted to get the information. So she was in contact with her own bishop, because of course, if you're going to write to an apostle, you have to go through your bishop. So she goes to his bishop. His name was Bishop Kennedy. And she says, I want to write. I have a question. Will you help me write a letter to Joseph Fielding Smith? So they penned this letter together. And she said, she asked for a copy of Joseph's vision in his own hand, because using deductive reasoning, she could see that that must be there. That has to exist, because why these conflicting accounts? She also asked for any information on places where Joseph Smith or Brigham Young identified the number of personages, because she's starting to clue in to the fact that there's a difference here. So they write this letter, and the bishop sends it off. And then a little while later, he invites her over to his office to read the response from Joseph Fielding. And he calls her an apostate. He calls her a horrible person. He says that she's not a truth seeker. She's stirring up trouble. She's involved in a sinister conspiracy. I mean, this letter goes on and on and on. You can read it in this book, which is why I recommend everyone read it. And Sandra's just sitting there going, I literally was just asking for some information about my church's history. And then she asked the bishop, does this sound right to you? What he responded, and the bishop's like, yeah, fair, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, he had no problem with Joseph Fielding Smith saying all this to her. Well, Sandra is so tenacious. I mean, this is what you get from this book and her whole life. She's like, okay, well, all right. But what he said is, I'm not going to give you a copy of this document. And she's like, so you're saying there's a document, right? He basically let it slip that it does exist. You're saying there's a document. So she knew. I know. You can't make this stuff up. I'm not kidding. It's so great. And so basically a little while later, she said, okay. And she wrote him back through the bishop. And she said, I am going to be publishing the 2 mimeographed copies. Keep in mind, this is the 60s. This is what kills me. They're writing letters, handwriting with stamps, mailing them in, mimeographing, information. She let them know, I am going to be putting this information out. The different versions from this historical record that I found looks like this is happening. There's a confusion on the personages, and they never wrote back. But that is basically one of the first things they published. They were now in the publishing business to get the truth out there. So it's an amazing story.
Taking center stage, Joseph Fielding. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
And he was the historian. I mean, not only wasn't he an apostle, but he was the keeper of the gate, the keeper of the knowledge. And so to me, that was bad form, Joseph Fielding Smith.
Yeah, well, everything he did was bad form. Every time he opened his mouth, he was saying something stupid or doing something.
Yeah, definitely think that way. So when you're the church historian, a highly trained historian, what do you do when someone calls you on this and you know you've ripped it out? Well, obviously you get your Scotch tape out and you tape it back into the book. So it looks like you never cut it out. And you can actually see on this picture on the right, I know it's, but on that left-hand side, you can actually see the Scotch tape where it covers up the writing as he taped it back in, which today you just sit and go, this is a handwritten copy of the first vision, the only one he wrote himself, and we've got Scotch tape across it.
The lack of appreciation and respect is absolutely mind-boggling with this idiot. And I am being charitable.
It is fun. Well, so now he's got this problem because Sandra's saying this letter exists. He has to tape it back in and admit that it exists. And so this is the mid-60s. He then it finds its way to BYU to a student who is writing his doctoral thesis, and somehow this finds its way into his hands, and he's able to write about it. And this is how historians working for the LDS Church found the document with Sandra Tanner and her aunt and that doing all the work to actually shake it up and make it come out. So amazing story. And if that doesn't make you appreciate Sandra for that, that says something.
And you're not paying attention.
Yeah. Read this book, everybody. It's going to blow your mind. Not kidding.
Yeah. It's my firm belief that the Tanners and the Vogel are responsible for the church for the most part. And he is in the house. Welcome, Dan Vogel. They are responsible for the church realizing, hey, we're being made to look like pudding heads here. We are the ones who should be kicking out the quality history, not our enemies. And they finally got a Holy Ghost revelation saying, yeah, you're behind. You better catch up. And that's why the Joseph Smith papers. So,
and I'm glad Dan is here because his name showed up over and over again in the stuff we were looking at. A lot of the stuff that he wrote and that come up over and over. So it's good to have him to fact check us because there are so many different spins on this that you're going, am I following this string right? As you cross through all the different balls of string they've thrown into your path. But the last thing they said in that paragraph, or the second to last thing they said, since that time, these documents have been discussed repeatedly in church magazines, in works printed by church-owned and church-affiliated presses, and by Latter-day Saint scholars and other venues. We went to the footnotes in here to see, well, where did they publish these? And if you want to pull up the next slide, 4 places that they list as where these were listed. The first one was in the 1970 improvement era.
Okay.
The second one was 1971 in a book entitled The First Vision. And I can't read that one. I can't remember who wrote that. Allen, I think, was his name.
First Vision in its historical context.
Is it McKay?
Allen, James B. Allen.
James B. Allen, yeah.
That's right, James B. Allen.
And so, I don't know how many people read a lot of James Allen. Probably Dan.
A very excellent scholar. I've read a few of James. He was in the Leonard Arrington years trying to rewrite the church history and open it up, and they shut him down.
Yeah.
And then in the Ensign, I say Ensign, it's probably Ensign. I don't know. I get
it's up for debate.
Utah accent, Ensign.
Ensign.
1996, there's an article about this, and then 2012, right before the essay comes out, there's a book that comes out.
Oh, look, there's only a 25-year gap there, and there's only So I mean,
mention it every 10 years. That's enough. It's fine. We got it.
It's fine. I went on my mission in 88, and I was born in 69. So I was literally 1 and 2 years old when the first 2 that they mentioned come out. I went all the way up to my mission, and was home for years before that third account came out.
Yes, but your testimony showed up when you were age 1 after you read that first account.
After I read the Improvement Era.
Oh, good. There you go.
But it's interesting because we actually went to the Improvement Era and took a look. But if you go back, the one place it doesn't show up, it was never mentioned in conference. Never in conference have they talked about this. There's not a conference talk that we could find that references multiple accounts of the first vision that might contradict each other.
Right. And I'm curious. I'm curious to ask our viewers and listeners if anybody, the other slide there, taught it on their mission, because I don't believe anybody did. That there were more than one. I didn't serve a mission, but yeah, I'm just curious in the chat if anybody.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because how would you even teach it? I mean, how inspiring is that? So there was one, okay, maybe two. We don't know how many, but it was incredible. I don't know how you would teach it exactly.
Yeah, that's the spin they make right now, is they all support each other. They make a more marvelous, more blended narrative by having multiple versions. And it's like, I sat and taught the first discussion in the MTC probably 70 times before they let me go out. Never once did anyone share this wonderful story of a second vision. And I can guarantee if I ask anyone here to tell me the first vision account, they will never say, oh, well, there was one that had one being that showed up, one that had a host of angels that showed up, and one that had two beings showed up. Everyone knows the two being.
There was one where Mr. Satan showed up.
Yeah, well, he shows up in a couple of them as well. Yeah. But we all know only one. So why are they telling us that this is so important? And why would you cut it out of the book when you found it and not bring it up to anyone? If it's so enlightening and so strengthening, why did Joseph Fielding Smith cut it out in the first place? Why didn't he run to the president of the church and say, look what I found? But he didn't do it.
He didn't do it.
So he obviously saw the problems as he read it and recognized that this was problematic to the church, and that's why he hid it. And
but I'll bet he kept bearing his testimony.
As long as you bear your testimony, that's all that matters. Has it been discussed repeatedly? I think every one of us who's been in seminary, who's been in institute, who has been on a mission, this was not taught repeatedly to us until they were caught, and until they had to let this go, and until the internet came out and people were able to start seeing it. But one thing that we did is we dove in and we looked at some of the, if you want to pull up the next slide, we actually went to the Improvement Era to see what is it that they included in that article.
They're saying there's 8 accounts.
Well, yeah, because they have the contemporary accounts, the secondary accounts as well.
Oh, okay.
What they did is they put this chart in here, and I know it's a little hard to read, especially for us older people. But the point of this is, I want to point out just a couple things in here. First off, they did not print the 4 accounts. They reference them, they talk about them, but they can control the narrative. They don't tell you that in the 1832 account, only one personage shows up. Now, if you look at the chart here, one of the places there is 2 personages, and you can see that the dots are all the way across, except for in the 1831-32 account. There, they leave it blank where it says appearance of deity. That happens in every one. Well, it depends on what your definition of deity is, because he refers to several of them as angels. So is an angel deity or not? That's right. The first point. But the one that says 2 personages, which I hope you guys can see that, but it's not marked in the 1832 account. They seem to think this isn't that big of a deal. 1832, it's only the first ever written account written by the person who supposedly had the vision, but that doesn't seem to be that important that he.
Well, no, because it was not, because Joseph Smith was not yet doctrinally correct.
That's exactly the truth, and that's one of the things that we want to look at. But the point is, if you want to look up the improvement era, you can go online, you can find it, you can read the article. They do talk about the different visions, but they completely control it. They tell you what they want you to know about each of the visions. You don't get to read the essays. And in 1970, I don't know where you'd go to get the essays. You can't go to the internet to get them. So I'm not sure where you were supposed to go to get those. But
I thought it was interesting to see that it's the same kind of narrative. It's the same kind of tactics to not clue you in that there's something else going on. I mean, they started very early, decades and decades ago, with the controlling that narrative, using the very same tactics. It was very interesting. I would suggest everybody go read this. It's fascinating.
Yeah, James Allen does a good job on that. And I've got several different scholarly analysis of the first vision since that one. And of course, Bushman has now brought it out. Dan Vogel.
About it. Yeah. 1996 in the Ensign, again, they talked about all these different accounts, but they reassure you that there's no problems. There's nothing to see there. They all tell us close narrative. They can all be reconciled, and there's nothing to see here. But again, they don't print any of these accounts so that someone can actually read them and see for themselves and say, wait a minute, that's not what I was taught. So again, controlling the narrative is what the church does so well, and they've been doing it ever since then. But then the internet came out, and that kind of put a stop to it, because people now can actually read it for themselves. So, okay, Carrie, let's go to the next one.
Well, it hasn't put a stop to their deception. What it's put a stop to is believing what they say.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Interesting. Yeah, great point.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. We're not gloating about that. But after still 10 more years of internet and Google God, for the love of crying, flipping out loud, brethren, you've got to recognize you're not going to get away with that anymore. I mean, man, it's just staggering. They think they can. So, yeah. You want me to read this one?
Yes, if you could, Carrie.
Yeah, I'm too mad at this section to read it. So go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, this section. Yeah, no kidding.
This one just killed me. Oh my gosh.
This one kills everybody. Yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm going to read now before I start getting mad with Rebecca. The various accounts of the first vision tell a consistent story. Bzz, wrong answer. Oh, sorry. The various accounts of the first vision tell a consistent story, though naturally they differ in emphasis and detail. Historians expect that when an individual retells an experience in multiple settings to different audiences over many years, hey, no snickering in the background. Each account will emphasize various aspects of the experience and contain unique details. Indeed, differences similar to those in the first vision accounts exist in the multiple scriptural accounts of Paul's vision on the road of Damascus and the apostles' experience on the Mount of Transfiguration. Yet, despite the differences, a basic consistency remains across all the accounts of the first vision. Yeah, it was all made up. Oh, no, that's not them. That's me. Some have mistakenly argued, they're talking about us, guys.
Yeah.
Some have mistakenly argued that any variation in the retelling of the story is evidence of fabrication. To the contrary, the rich historical record that Joseph Fielding Smith didn't tear out first enables us to learn more about this remarkable event than we could if it were less well documented. So there you have it. Rebecca, what is your beef with that pure diamond truth? Come on, girl.
Oh, it's just so casually stated. Naturally, when you tell a story, you're going to tell it in a different way every time. We all expect that, and it only makes it more and more believable. I think we all know that's absolutely ridiculous. And to use the example of Paul and the Mount of Transfiguration, those were not first-hand accounts. We're talking about account written and told by first person, right? It's different when other people tell something. And of course, then you have the game of telephone. So throw those examples out. That's absolutely ridiculous. But the idea that you become, I think about being a mom and, you know, your kid comes in and you say, what happened? Oh, this happened. No, this. No, it was this. No, this. You know, do you believe your child more and more? No, you're like, you're absolutely telling a fib to me. Now, what really happened? So just this idea that they try to normalize that and tell us, those of us that question this idea are mistaken and not even thinking in the right way. It's just kind of infuriating to me. So what did you guys think about it?
Well, if I may, real quick, Landon, then you probably have the stronger point here. But in a court of law, and I do have my dear friend, Radio Free Mormon, in the chat, you'll verify this. If I was to testify as a witness that I only saw one guy do it, then that's one thing. But on another occasion, another witness comes and says, well, he told me that it was two guys that did it. And a third guy says, well, yeah, two guys may have done it, but there was a whole host of others with them. How credible would my testimony be? And I'm not trying to be facetious in any manner. Folks, one is not two, and two is not also many. These are number contradictions that call into question the testimony. If you can't grasp that, then you're giving Joseph Smith too much of a break, in my opinion. Landon, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I have to just simply stand back and say, why did Joseph Fielding Smith not give it to Sandra Tanner if it was so convincing and such a consistent story? Why did he say to her that she was a satanic cult after the church? Because she wanted the firsthand account from the prophet himself who'd seen it.
Which is a rich historical record. Why would he not share the rich historical record with all of us?
That is fascinating, though. Yeah, his reaction tells you something smells like something bad in River City.
This is so what we see with the church. The cover-up is worse than the information that if you'd have gotten it in the first place.
It's Watergate. It's absolutely Watergate.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
It's Vision-gate.
And then they do exactly what the church always does. They throw the Bible under the bus. They always find an example of, well, if you think that this is dumb, we can show you an example from the Bible that's
even dumber.
So don't criticize us. And it's like, okay, well, is there a possibility that both of them aren't actually true visions that somebody saw? That can't even be one of the explanations. It has to be, well, because the Bible tells an inconsistent story. It's okay that the Book of Mormon or that Joseph Smith tells an inconsistent story because we see it all over the Bible. Again, just ridiculous. They're throwing people under the bus. And again, if it is such a rich historical record that enables us to learn more, why didn't they teach it to us? Why, since for 50 years, did it take until the internet came up until they taught us this rich story? Because most of us, I can't say none, maybe some of us knew this, but I certainly never heard this. I was teaching seminary in the 90s, early morning seminary. None of this was in the stuff I was supposed to teach the kids. Wouldn't they want this rich historical message? Their actions just
betray them.
Hold their hands. Yeah. So, of course, whenever we do a scientific analysis of anything or want to look at something scientific, we go to Star Trek.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, hang on to your seats. We're going to go where no man or woman has gone before. Thank you to Rebecca, Biblioteca Artistica.
I feel like we work out our trauma with Trexmo. I'm not kidding, because here you have Spock saying, then I saw the Lord. I mean, a host of angels. I mean, two personages, a pillar of fire, a host of angels and angelic beings. I mean, God the Father and Jesus Christ. And of course, Kirk is like, I now can't even read that. What did I write?
Snap out of it, Spock.
Snap out of it, Spock. Totally that's right.
Illogical.
What you're saying is totally illogical. Yeah, because that's exactly it. And he looks like he's having a vision right there.
and this is exactly what Carrie just described. You know,
yep.
When someone's telling the same story with multiple characters and multiple differences, that doesn't strengthen their testimony. That detracts from their testimony. And he's talking like, oh, they're talking to different audiences, and that's why he's telling a different story. What happened to a prophet boldly declaring the message? Why is he changing it for different audiences? Shouldn't he be telling the whole world the experiences that happened and let the world choose then whether to believe it or not?
Grand slam right there. Right there. What on earth is this ridiculous apologetic that, oh, well, it's okay to tell your story differently if you're talking to them as opposed to these? Really? So is truth relative in Mormonism? They'll scream their fool head off against you, and yet they turn around and say, oh, well, in this case, it's okay. The truth of the first vision and the details is relative to the audience. Well, make up your pea-picking mind. Do we have the truth or do we have a relative truth? Kind of like relative morality. And they hate it when we bring that up. That's how they propose to teach it. So fascinating. Well said, Landon.
Well, let's see how they explain this away for us and how they, get all of these to be similar. There's multiple accounts that we read about. Some, as we said, are secondhand. But Rebecca, do you want to read that?
Sure. And this is under the heading of Accounts of the First Vision. And it says, each account of the first vision by Joseph Smith and his contemporaries has its own history and context that influenced the event, how the event was recalled, communicated, and recorded. These accounts are discussed below. And this is a really interesting picture. We just kind of found this online. It looks very spooky and otherworldly, but it shows the different, versions of the vision, what was described in each one. So
yeah,
look at that. Yeah, I know it looks very scary.
1827, 1830,
yeah.
Each one were different. 1832, the 34, 35. 1835. Look at all those people down there in the bottom left-hand corner. I mean, there's a trillion of them. There's the hosts of the angels right there,
Yeah, it was a party.
Yeah, when you look at
none of these do the Father or the Son have a tie on. This. That's not sacrament meeting attire.
Nope.
Well, we're going to limit to kind of the four accounts right now to the four accounts that Joseph Smith is involved with directly, firsthand accounts. So if we go to the next slide, we have the 1832 account and the information about that. Carrie, can you read that?
Yes, the earliest known account of the first vision, the only account written in Joseph Smith's own hand upon paper, is found in a short unpublished autobiography Joseph Smith produced in the second half of 1832. In the account, Joseph Smith described his consciousness of his own sins and his frustration at being unable to find a church that matched the one he had read about in the New Testament, and that would lead him to redemption. He emphasized Jesus Christ's atonement and the personal redemption it offered. He wrote that, quote, the Lord, unquote, appeared and forgave him of his sins. As a result of the vision, Joseph experienced joy and love, though, as he noted, he could find no one who believed his account.
Okay, so this to me is the most important account of any of the accounts because it's written by his own hand. He was actually starting to write a history of the church, and so he started to write this down. If you go to the next slide, we actually have the account.
Yes.
Here, and you can find this online. You can go and read the account. It's it's a little too long for us to read all the way through, but I did highlight a couple of points here when he gets down towards the bottom that might surprise us. First of all, he says it's in the 16th year. So he's not 14 years old. The one says 15th year. This says 16th year. And then he says he was filled with the Spirit of God, and the Lord opened the heavens upon me, and I saw the Lord. So this is what he described. He said, the Lord opened the heavens upon me, and I saw the Lord. Now, that sounds like one person to me. And if you go back and you look at the 1970 account where I pointed out the dot was missing from the 1832 account for two personages, it looks like Alan, the guy who wrote the article and who wrote all these books about it, that he saw that as only one personage. He didn't put a dot there saying this is two persons. He says this account only has one person. Then they said your sins are forgiven. The world lieth in sin. The whole thing kind of seemed to be more about sin and Joseph being forgiven for his sins. He didn't have a lot of discussion here about a church and true church and all of that information. So when we read the account, we notice that Satan is missing. It's only one personage that's talking to him. He's there for a remission of sins, and that's why he went there. Quite a bit different than what we would expect. But as always, the church is able to explain this away. And the way they explain this away is they say, no. This is two personages that he's talking about. If you look at what he said, the Lord opened the heavens upon me, and I saw the Lord. So he saw two personages. The first, the Lord, is God the Father who opened the heavens. And the second, the Lord, is Jesus Christ, who is the one who talked to him. So it wouldn't seem odd that he would focus on the second Lord who is talking to him all the time and just focus on that and call him the Lord. So two personages, the Lord is not singular, as every one of us who studies English would think, but the Lord is actually plural, and it doesn't contradict at all with the message in the other versions.
And they really think people are going to swallow that. I mean,
I feel if they need to, they're going to. Do you know what I mean? If you're looking for something to hang on to, you can accept a plural, the Lord.
Well, let me just say,
too much of a stretch.
Yeah, let me just say, oh, Lord. And I don't mean the first one, I mean the second one.
That's the exact same thing I said when I read that explanation. I went, oh, Lord.
Yeah. Lordy Lord, as somebody said in the chat.
Wow.
How can college professors who have doctorates in this go along with this? This is a problem with a need for an explanation. Even the first guy who read it and wrote about it is thinking that this is only one personage and that he's not describing two personages, but they have to solve the problem. There can't be any conflict. And so rather than look for a reason why it might have changed from one personage to two personages, they have to describe why that one personage is really two personages. They're working it backwards.
Yeah.
The thing is,
reasoning.
Yeah, we can look at it though, and we can say, well, why might there only be one personage in the 1832 account and yet two personages in the later account? And if you pull up the next slide, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Let's take a look at this. Holy Trinity, Batman. Batman was there?
Batman was there. What we find out is that in 1832, Joseph Smith believed in the Trinity. He was still a person who believed in the Trinity, and the Book of Mormon reflected that. The original Book of Mormon gives us several areas where they talk about that. And I'm going to go to some of these. The statement of the three witnesses could not be more clear, and the honor be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Ghost, which is one God. The title page of the Book of Mormon again could not be more clear, and also to the convincing of the Jew and Gentile that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God, manifesting himself unto all nations. The book of First Nephi itself, if we look, what happened is in the original, and you see down here on these dates here, in the 1830 version, they said, "Behold, the virgin whom thou seest is the mother of God." They also say, "Behold, the Lamb of God, yea, even the eternal Father, yea, the everlasting God, which judged of the world. The Lamb of God is the eternal Father." In the 1830 Book of Mormon, we have a God that's Trinitarian. However, by 1838, Joseph Smith has changed his mind on this. God is now.
Well, now hold on. Let's give Brother Joseph a break. It was God who
cannot say that. That's right.
It must have been God who changed his mind, because God made them go back in 1837 and change the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon, that's the most correct book of any book on earth. In 1837,
and this is a doctrinal change. This is
a doctrinal change.
Mark.
They argue that it was a miss, that it was written wrong or whatever. But if you look at the bottom here, I read you the 1830 version. So, "Behold, the virgin whom thou seest is the mother of God," was changed to, "Now behold, the virgin whom thou seest is the mother of the Son of God." So they've changed it now. The next one down, "Behold, the Lamb of God, yea, even the eternal Father," is now, "Behold, the Lamb of God, yea, even the Son of the eternal Father. Yea, the everlasting God was judged of the world," is now, "Yea, the Son of the everlasting God was judged of the world." So the Son. "The Lamb of God is the eternal Father," was changed to, "The Lamb of God is the Son of the eternal Father."
And in Brigham Young's day, it became Adam.
Yeah, well,
exactly. That's a whole nother episode, Terry. We can't go there today. It's too much.
It's all interconnected.
It is. It's all related.
So
these are not discrepancies, which is really important to note. These are not contradictions. These are changes in evolving philosophies and theological thought, and I don't understand really why the church doesn't just say that. But of course they can't, because everything's inspired and it's God, of course. But it makes perfect sense, absolute perfect sense, as you see the trajectory, you see his thought process. But instead they have to do all these gymnastics around the contradictions, because they can't go there and say, hey, he was kind of evolving. I'll say that instead of making it up. I'll call it evolving.
And why would Joseph, who saw God and Jesus were two separate people, in 1820, produce a book in 1830 where it says they're the same person, and then it takes him 7 years to realize that they're not the same person and go back and make the changes? And remember, when he was translating, the rock wouldn't go on until he wouldn't give him the next word until the scribe had accurately written down what was supposed to be there. So we know that the scribe was writing down exactly what was supposed to be written down, if we believe this. And there's no reason to go back and change it now.
Yes, it is. It was that damn seer stone's fault.
I feel like God might have been having an identity crisis himself. I mean, have we even explored that angle?
He was probably wondering, well, am I the Father or am I the Son?
Am I one? Am I the Son? Do I feel? Yeah. We don't know.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
So, this is absolutely, we see the Trinitarian view of him changing over time. We get the King Follett letter. 1837, they make the Book of Mormon changes. 1838, when he writes his history of the church, where he sees God the Father, what is happening in the church in 1838?
Nothing.
A whole bunch of things are happening in 1838. He's just had the two of the three witnesses are leaving.
I think we have a slide for this, Landon. I think we have a slide that we can go into on that part.
Let's go to the Trexmo.
Yeah, let's wait for that.
Yeah.
Did I say one personage? No, I definitely saw two. It was definitely two, I think. And that's very much what we get from this. Let's see. Yeah, let's go to the 1835 account. Then we'll talk about 1838 and what's happening there.
Yes,
exactly.
There's another 1835 account. Rebecca?
I can read that if you want. Yep, I've got that. So this is 1835. In the fall of 1835, Joseph Smith recounted his first vision to Robert Matthews, a visitor to Kirkland, Ohio. The retelling, recorded in Joseph's journal by his scribe, Warren Parrish, emphasizes his attempt to discover which church is right. So that's something new. The opposition he felt as he prayed, and the appearance of one divine personage who was followed shortly by another, of course, as divine personages tend to be. This account also notes the appearance of angels in the vision. He's just throwing in everything in the kitchen sink, I think, is what he's doing here in 1835, covering all the bases.
Yeah, so we basically see a shift. We see his shifting. 1832, he's Trinitarian. 1835, we get two personages. I don't think they're described as God and Jesus. They're described as two angels or two personages or angels of the Lord, but they're never, specifically told who these two personages are. And then we get a host of angels that are involved as well. So we've never heard about this host of angels before, and yet now here we are. So.
Well, so maybe Joseph Smith embellishing this story is to impress this man, Robert Matthews, whoever that was. And so the church is correct. Joseph Smith has to tell the story differently to different audiences, depending on what he wants to accomplish. But my question is, what would that make all the rest of the world think? I don't think Joseph Smith thought far enough ahead.
No, I think you're right. And I think it's interesting to note in the essay itself, again, everything is paraphrased. This is why we've included in the slides the actual accounts, because we would like to encourage everybody to go read those. There's more to it. And you'll see kind of these wiggle words and these ways that they're kind of, speaking around it in the essay to describe, to make it sound all perfectly natural and normal progression. Anybody would say this, but when you read the actual accounts, you'll see that there's a difference there. But again, they're just kind of downplaying that. So it's important to read the actual accounts as written or transcribed.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I want to actually point, this is the first vision where we see Satan show up. Satan shows up this time before anything happens. And in this point, he's going to look for the answers to the, which church is true and stuff. And then Satan shows up behind him. But I want to read the last paragraph here, because this is kind of the meat of what happened, and see if this sounds like the first vision that we're all aware of. He said, "I kneeled again. My mouth was open and my tongue liberated, and I called on the Lord in mighty prayer. A pillar of fire appeared above my head. It presently rested down upon me and filled me with joy unspeakable. A personage appeared in the midst of this pillar of flame, which was spread all around, and yet nothing consumed. Another personage soon appeared like unto the first. He said unto me, Thy sins are forgiven thee. He testified unto me that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And I saw many angels in this vision. I was about 14 years old when I received this first communication." So here we've got fire, a pillar of fire, and you could say, well, fire is light. No, he said it didn't consume anything. So this is actual fire and flames. A personage comes down, and then another personage. We don't know who these personages are. They do testify that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Again, they forgive his sins, but they don't tell him anything about a true church or not to join any church. None of that happens. So we slowly see each progressive account gets a little different, gets more details that get closer to the 1838 account, but is not the 1832 account. And of course, at this point, we're, another 3 years. At this point, we're 15 years after Joseph Smith supposedly had the first vision before we're getting these details from it.
But it's a rich historical record.
It's a rich historical
record that we never hear about.
I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we go on to the 1838
It's our
account.
favorite one.
This
That's
is our
right.
favorite one. Rebecca picked this fine Lego renditioning of the first vision because
Love
we've
this
all
Keith
seen
Garfield.
every picture of the first vision from the 1838 account.
That's right. I was trying to be different, just a little different.
Just like Joseph Smith with his various accounts. You're just being a little
That's
different.
right. A rich historical Lego record. That's what this is. So.
Rebecca, do you want to read that one?
Sure. Yeah. This is the 1838 account. And it says the narration of the first vision best known to Latter-day Saints today. And why is that? Is the 1838 account. First published in 1842 in the Times and Seasons, the church newspaper in Nauvoo, Illinois, the account was part of a longer history dictated by Joseph Smith between periods of intense opposition. That's the key right there. Whereas the 1832 account emphasizes the more personal story of Joseph Smith as a young man seeking forgiveness, the 1838 account focuses on the vision as the beginning of the rise and progress of the church. Like the 1835 account, the central question of the narrative is, which church is right?
Yeah, so 1838 account, one we all know and love and taught on our mission, comes about in a very difficult time in Joseph Smith's life. The two of the three. You can go ahead, go that next one.
Yeah,
two of the three of the witnesses leave. Oliver Cowdery's excommunicated for pointing out Joseph Smith's adultery.
David Alger, a young teenage girl in the barn.
Yeah.
And for being a lawyer, we should point out that's the other.
And for being a lawyer. Yeah, he didn't get out.
He's a lawyer. That's right.
Or wanting to be a lawyer, I think. I don't think he was quite a lawyer yet. David Whitmer actually has God speaks to him in a voice and tells him that Joseph Smith is a fallen prophet and that he is to leave the church. Of course, we're supposed to believe David Whitmer when he says he saw the gold plates, but we're not supposed to believe him when he hears a voice of God saying that Joseph is a fallen prophet.
Nor are we supposed to believe him when in his witness unto Christ or whatever, he describes the actual translation process with the seer stone either, because his account is much, much later. And that's a tight translation. And that really kicks the Book of Mormon's butt when it comes to the archaeological lack of verification, but I'm way off topic. But
you're never off topic, Terry. Never.
David Whitmer is credible when he shows us we're good, and David Whitmer is just a bully boy, and don't believe him when he shows you something in the historical record that doesn't make us look good. That's how to do it.
Exactly. And if you go back to the slide, I mean, we literally can call it a crisis of credibility. Hence the picture there. He just doesn't seem very credible. I really question his credibility at this point. And then, of course, you also have the Kirkland Safety Society, the complete collapse of the bank. People have no confidence in him. So in the essay itself, here it says, dictated during a period of intense opposition, right? They call it opposition. And then they say that this vision starts to show the rise and progress of the church. So basically, this vision was really important and needed to show everybody that, hey, I'm the man. You got to go through me to get to God. I'm the one. I've got the church. I've got the power. He has to do something to improve his credibility, his, stance, because everybody's jumping ship. So that's kind of how I look at it. Do you guys see it that way?
Yeah, everyone's calling him a fallen prophet at this point.
Right.
He's lost all their money that he told them this bank was going to be the safe and was going to, be the best bank in the world or whatever story he spun for him. And now they're all losing their money. All of the people are leaving him. They're questioning whether he should even be the leader of the church. And then he comes up and says, oh, by the way, guys, did I happen to mention that I saw God and Jesus and they told me that this is the only true church on the face of the earth and that I'm the one that was called to restore it?
Who, me?
Mention that over the last 18 years?
Just little old me. Yes, I lost all your stupid money, but hey, I've got the true church for you.
It's a brilliant move, though. It's a brilliant move, you know, to empower himself and make himself look great. And people obviously bought it and they fell for it. But it was a brilliant move.
Some of them,
yeah.
McClellan,
my ancestor did. My ancestor.
Yeah, my ancestor. Yeah,
which is why I'm here, because my ancestor bought it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was mine. Yeah.
Raise your hand if your ancestor bought it. Yeah.
They bought the farm, all right.
They did. They did.
Well, the interesting thing is the 1838 account was not published until 1842. Correct. So this is now 22 years after the first vision is the first time. Well, in 1840, it's published in a pamphlet that I think Pratt or Orson Hyde or one of those guys.
Orson Pratt.
See, I got half of it right on each name.
Well, Joseph Smith.
You made up a new character.
Joseph Smith got half of it right. One person
right.
did it too. So it's all good.
So he put a pamphlet out in England that talked a little bit about the first vision, but the first time it's published in a church, Times and Seasons, I think, is where it went. That anyone could read about the first account is 22 years after he supposedly had the vision. Is the first time we have a written account that anybody can read.
Okay, now hold it right there. I don't mean to interrupt you, but so obviously for Joseph Smith, can we legitimately say now, in all seriousness, well, most seriousness, for the entire lifespan of the prophet Joseph Smith, this wasn't any kind of a missionary tool whatsoever?
None whatsoever. There's not a single pamphlet, not a single written church manual. This was never talked about. Nobody, and we'll go even further to that, no one, including his mother, knew about this.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to get into that.
It's been there. It's just been excised by Brigham Young.
Yes.
And we all know your mother knows everything. You may not think she does, but she knows.
How dare you question Lucy Mack?
That's right.
But we'll
get there.
We will get to that, and we will get to how they understood the first vision as well up until that point. So there's one more account we got to talk about, the 1842 account. This was written in response to the Chicago Democrat. Editor John Wentworth asked for some information. We're not going to show this one or read this one because it's fairly consistent with the 1838 version. The key thing of this is the story where Joseph then shortened and made 13 articles of faith that he presented to Wentworth. It's known as the Wentworth letter, where he said what we believe in. And so that all came from this. It's basically the 1838 account kind of rehashed, which makes sense because it was just published in 1842 as well with the Times and Seasons. And so we see that. So let's go ahead then and let's go to the next account. We want to talk about some of the secondhand accounts. So we just talked about the primary sources. We want to talk about the secondary accounts because the essay talks about them. It says here, this is out of the essay. Besides these accounts from Joseph Smith himself, 5 accounts were written by contemporaries who heard Joseph Smith speak about the vision. One was Orson Pratt, it's Orson Pratt in 1840 in a pamphlet called An Interesting Account of Several Remarkable Visions. Orson Hyde in some German...
Ein Ruf aus der Wust,
yes.
1842.
Ooh, very good, Carrie.
You got your German down. Levi Richard in Journal 11 in 1843. David Nye White, interview with Joseph Smith in 1843, and Alexander Neibauer in May of 1844. So these are where we get the second hand accounts, and you can go and read those online as too. They're not nearly as detailed. And again, they're secondhand accounts, so they're not nearly as strong as the primary accounts. But one thing that is not talked about in the essay at all is the fact that everybody seems to be having visions in the early 1820s, 1810s, 1820s, 1830s in upstate New York. I don't know what's in the water, but they're all having these visions. If you want to go to the next slide.
I wonder if it was the Father and the Son in the water.
There was
the holy water. That's it.
there was definitely something in this water, because these were very common. In fact, Richard Bushman identifies over 33 visionary tales published between 1783 and 1815. And we bring this up.
All right. Now it's my turn to complain.
Okay.
Go, Carrie.
Strongly, because none of us were taught this.
Mm-hmm.
This rich history of America in Joseph Smith's day from the church's angle. I taught on my mission that this is what distinguished Joseph Smith from everyone else.
Yep.
God had gone dark in the great apostasy.
Yep.
And only with Joseph Smith, with this first vision, was the opening of the heavens for the restoration of correct doctrinal truths. Weren't you guys taught that in seminary too? No one else had this vision. Joseph Smith was fundamentally unique. And now the church historians show the real rich history, and it shows that the church has been feeding us bullshit. And that makes us mad.
And you were led to believe that it was so unique that he was afraid to share it, because no one else was having these visions, and he better not tell anyone or they're going to lock him away in a loony bin. And that is not true. I believe it's an era. What we learned from Michael Quinn's magic worldview is that, contrary to what most people think, most Americans were unchurched prior to this. They were not attending a church. They were reading the Bible at home. You know, it was more of a folk religion. And suddenly during this era, they start to become more churched. If that's, can I use that in that way? Churched, attending church, finding church. And part of that is having these, imagining that you're having these heightened experiences. And so I think that sort of explains. Everybody's, like the slide says, you've had a vision and you've had a vision, and everybody was having one. It was not unique in any way whatsoever. And not only were they having visions, they were publishing them in newspapers and periodicals and books. Everybody could write one down. And I think looking at Joseph Smith's personality and psychology, if somebody else is having something fantastic happen to them, he has to have something even more fantastic happen. There's no way the guy down the street is having a vision and he's not, he's got a one-up at, oh yeah, well, I saw the Lord and he was plural. I mean, you've got to do
always had to up. You always had to outdo everybody and everything.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And he had no problem making up stories. Look at Zelf. That's Zelf, right? He had no problem inventing these things. So,
and yet his was not published in the newspaper, where 33 others are documented, and many of them are written in the newspaper.
And his personal account was taken out and only later Scotch taped back in. That's how important his was. Yeah, 33 different visionary tales, man.
33.
That's not a small number compared to we were told no one else had those.
And we know for a fact that Joseph Smith was aware of these of many of these visions. And it's amazing.
It's commonplace.
His story of God and his vision seems to borrow from the published accounts of these others. In fact, in some cases, it's almost word for word what he's describing in his 1838 vision, a pillar of light, the calling on.
And I think we have a slide for this that we can kind of show the difference.
You keep going, Landon. Yeah, this is very important.
Yep. Rebecca, you want to hit these?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly that. He would read these, he would hear of these, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, well, I did too, right? So, and these also are really interesting to read in their entirety. I just kind of pulled out some of the similarities. So you have Norris Stearns, this is 1815. They're both near the brink of death. They're both interrupted by light. They both see the Father and Son in bodily form. They both struggle to describe the appearance, and they both use the word pillar in their vision.
So see the Father and the Son in bodily form. So that was not a unique restoration of
not at all
doctrine.
Yeah, Norris already knew that they were two separate ones in 1815.
Yeah, Norris Stearns, he had it going on. So, and then you have 1821, you have Charles Finney. And again, these are just summaries. I would encourage everybody to go read them because they're eerily Same verbiage, same language. It's almost frightening how close they are. So in this one, they're both impressed with scripture, both enter the woods to be alone to pray, both struggle to pray, both are overwhelmed by a power, they both fall into despair, they both experience weakness, and they both hear someone approach, and then they have an otherworldly experience. So we're just going to touch on a few just to give you an idea.
Charles Finney was a very popular theologian, right?
Yep. Exactly.
He had tens of thousands of people listening to him.
Yeah. So Joseph, I believe, would have heard of this.
None of these guys really saw anything. None of these are true. Only the
only the first vision is true. Yeah, we should make that clear up front, right? So then, if we go to the next slide, and again, we're just going through a few of these, and if you read them, it's just incredible. Elias Smith, they both entered the woods in the morning. They both see a light, and both of them claim some kind of divine encounter. So again, this idea that Joseph, it was too secret to share, not at all. Everybody was getting written up in the Reader's Digest, if they had that back then, for the visions that they were having. Also Wild, they both claim a divine encounter. They both lose capacity. Both are partial to the Methodist Church. That's the one that they're leaning toward, where they go and ask for more guidance. They both are told that all denominations are corrupt. So no original idea anywhere in any of these. Both withhold additional information, meaning that they said, I was told many other things, but I just can't say anything now, leave them wanting more. So between all these visions, they pretty much hit every point of this amalgam of a vision that Joseph Smith eventually arrives at. So it's really interesting to read these.
And he had 10 and 15 and 20 years to put it all together coherently.
Correct.
And keep in mind, none of these are true until we get to these visions in 1830.
That's correct.
No, there are some other visions that seem to be true according to the church, because they now support. These are followers of Joseph Smith. Yeah. So if we go to the next slide.
Oh, first we have James Marsh, though. We have to talk about James Marsh, because that was important.
Yeah, that's
Isn't it interesting that if Joseph Smith's priesthood, vision, experience, translation capabilities, etc., was actually what God was going to do, why didn't he say anything to all those other 33 people when he had the chance to tell them, hey, by the way, pretty quick, I'm going to come to my true prophet of what I'm going to restore my true church through, Joseph Smith. You need to go look him up. We don't hear any of that from him.
We do. We're going to show you that.
I hold my tongue. Okay.
You want to hit James Marsh?
Yeah, so we made this little heading. I love this picture that we found. Visions in 1830 were not alien. So this is an obituary that is published in the newspaper where Joseph is the editor. And of course, this is Thomas Marsh's son. Isn't that correct, Landon? I think it was. Yeah. And so they were both 14 years old when they had a vision. They both had a vision and spoke to God the Father, and they both beheld the Son of God coming in all of his glory. So the reason, and so Joseph Smith would have absolutely been aware of this, I believe, anyway. It was published in the newspaper that he was the editor of. And I kind of feel him going, really? A little kid has this vision? Oh, yeah. I really feel there was some one-upmanship here. But the reason we chose this alien is Landon had such a good thought on this. If you think about it, like we talked about the religious fervor of the time. And of course, it's almost like a mass hysteria. Everybody's having a vision. I'm seeing God. Everybody's seeing it. Well, compare that to, like, say, the Cold War era, a 1950s kind of a thing, space race, all of that. What is everybody seeing? The same kind of things, aliens. And the encounters are all similar, right? You're being beamed up, you're being probed, you lose track of time. It's almost like this mass cultural experience that everybody has to jump on that bandwagon. So I thought that was a great point that Landon made. Visions 100 years earlier, 100 years later, we're seeing the aliens with similar experiences and sharing them. And everybody's having an experience or a vision.
And amazingly, we see no aliens in 1830. We see deity in 1830.
Deity.
Because people are becoming more, you can see that what the visions they're having are directly correlated to the cultural context of the time. There was a great revival, a great, reemergence of religion. People are seeing God. There's a space race. People are seeing aliens.
Right. Decades later, satanic panic, right? People are being influenced by Satan. You've got all this kind of stuff. So,
and in both cases, people are being probed.
Sorry, I just had to say that. Don't forget, I'm a sci-fi fan. So.
Oh my. We love it that you're a sci-fi fan, girl. Don't you ever change.
So let's go
who
to
is this?
Solomon Chamberlain. This is the guy you said, how come this never happens? Becky, you want to tell the story of Solomon Chamberlain?
Yeah, who is it?
he had these amazing visions. What year are we talking about, Landon? I can't even remember.
1816. I think he was 1816.
Yeah. And his vision, it's too small for me even to read on my paper that I printed out. I swear. So you might have to read this later. His vision was so similar to what Joseph Smith had. And then we'll tell you why this is relevant. Yes.
About this time, the Lord showed me in a vision that there were no people on the earth that were right, and that faith was gone from the earth, excepting a few, and that all churches were corrupt. I further saw in vision that he would soon raise up a church, that it would be after the apostolic order, that there would be in it the same powers and gifts that were in the days of Christ, and that I should live to see the day, and that there would be a book come forth like unto the Bible, and the people would be guided by it as well as the Bible. This was in the year of 1816. I then believed in gifts and miracles, as the Latter-day Saints do, for which I was much persecuted and called deluded. The vision I received from an angel or spirit from the eternal world that told me these things.
And we can probably stop there, don't you think, Landon? Yep. So basically, very early on, he had this, and he wrote this in his journal. And the reason we know about this, and the reason that they talk about this in conference, is because he later joined the church, because he found his way to the Smith farm, and he told them his experience and his vision. Yes, exactly. He shared all this information. And so the church kind of spins this as he had a preparatory vision to prepare him. I know everything's preparatory, right? Preparatory priesthood, preparatory magic. It's all preparatory. But he had this vision to allow him to understand that what Joseph was doing was correct and that he was a prophet. What else would you add to that, Landon? It's such an interesting little side note here, the Solomon Chamberlain story.
I would point out that he went to the Smiths' home. He found the Smiths when he heard about the Book of Mormon being translated. He went and told this story sitting with the Smith family. Joseph Smith,
the whole family.
This story. This is before Joseph Smith has written anything about his first vision. No, he hasn't written it down yet. And yet all of a sudden, the details that Chamberlain described in the dream and the vision that he had become the very same details that Joseph Smith puts in his vision of what happened. And it's funny because he says, I was deluded, I was derived, I was persecuted for what we don't have any indication that Joseph's going, yeah, man, I know what you're talking about. Same thing happened to me, Right,
not at all.
He takes this, and then, of course, we see that they use it in conference because he joined the church. Now it's a true vision. Now everything that he said was accurate. But the things that the other people who had visions that didn't join the church, those are wackos.
We've only got 1 out of 33, but baby, are we going to make hash with this one?
That's right.
Exactly. Well, and he did put his vision in a pamphlet. Somebody is asking in the chat, and I don't have my notes right in front of me, but the Chamberlain vision is in a pamphlet that was fairly widely circulated, wasn't it, Landon?
Yeah.
And they do quote it. I'm looking right here. There's a First Presidency message, April of 2010, in the Ensign, where President Uchtdorf talks about, they have no problem talking about Solomon Chamberlain because they see it as a confirmation, this preparatory vision to confirm what Joseph is later going to say. And yes, he was a faithful member, and I think he stayed in his entire life and championed Joseph. Yeah. So if you want to know more, Google Solomon Chamberlain, because it is a really interesting story that I think most of us don't know. And the parallels in his pamphlet that describe this vision are just incredible. And again, you're right, Landon. Joseph didn't go, dude, that happened to me. Let's talk about this. Instead, I think Joseph was like, what, angel? Okay, what else? What else? Tell me what else. You know, I think it was more like that.
In fact, let's go to the Trexmo on this.
Yeah, there's always a Trexmo. There has to be.
Absolutely. This is the best part of the presentation.
Right? It works out our first vision trauma. That's right. It says, and then it came to me. Everyone seems to be having visions around here. I'm going to have one too.
we all know Joseph can't not be outdone by anybody. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. He's always got to have the best, you know.
So let's go to the next slide. And this is really telling. And that is, let's talk about Joseph's family accounts. What did they say happened with the first vision? Exactly. And so we want to start with Lucy Mack Smith, because obviously this is Joseph's mother. If anyone should know about this vision, it should be Lucy Mack Smith. And so I actually read her book, The History of Joseph Smith by his mother, Lucy Mack Smith. And it became very concerning to me because I was reading the book and I was waiting to hear what happened with the first vision. I want to have her account because remember, he came in and he told his mom, "Oh, Mom, don't worry. I found the Presbyterian." She's the first person who sees him after this vision in 1820, according to the history. So what does she report? Well, you read her history and she's talking about the ague, or, you know, they had all these made up diseases that, you know, someone had in their knee and the rheumatism of somebody else. She described every sickness, everything that every one of her kids were doing. And then you get to where the first vision should be. And all of a sudden it says, and I'll tell you the story of the first vision. And it's exactly out of the Pearl of Great Price, the 1838 vision. Word for word, it's copied out of the 1838 vision. And you're going, she just told me about, you know, the rheumatism in someone's elbow, and she's not going to tell me about her experience with the first vision. What's going on here?
So rheumatism is more important than deity, I guess. And I have to point out that Dan Vogel is correcting our slide. And I remember that I did know this, but forgot. This is Joseph Smith's sister. And this is actually in Wikipedia listed as Lucy Mack, but it's not. So all we have as Lucy Mack are those lovely oil paintings where she looks so wonderful. Okay, so good. Yeah, so I'm correcting that because Dan, we are so glad we have Dan in the chat to keep us on track. So thank you. But continue, Landon.
Okay, so Lucy, this is what Lucy said. This is, so she, in her book actually got published in England under a different name. And in it, we have the first version, which is actually her first real writing, what she wrote. And this is what she said about the first vision. Our sons were actively employed in assisting their father to cut down the grain and storing it away in order for winter. One evening, we were sitting till quite late conversing upon the subject of the diversity of churches that had risen up in the world, and that many thousands opinions in existence as to the truths contained in Scripture. Joseph, who never said many words upon any subject, which is hard to believe, but always seemed to reflect more deeply than common persons of his age upon everything of a religious nature. After we ceased conversation, he went to bed and was pondering in his mind which of the churches were the true one. But he had not laid there long till he saw a bright light entered the room where he lay. He looked up and saw an angel of the Lord standing by him. The angel spoke, "I perceive that you are inquiring in your mind which is the true church. There is not a true church on earth, no, not one, and has not been since Peter took the keys of the Melchizedek priesthood after the order of God into the kingdom of heaven. The churches that are now upon the earth are all man-made churches."
Holy crap. That's Lucy Mack Smith's account.
That's her account of the first vision. He's not in the sacred grove. He's upstairs in his bedroom.
And who does that sound like? Yeah,
it does sound like Moroni.
And it sounds just like Moroni.
That Joseph Smith is talking about a Moroni vision he had prior to 1832, but he's not talking about God the Father and Jesus Christ showing to him. And so everyone seems to have this opinion that the angel Moroni is the first vision. Everyone in the early church seems to think that that the first vision was this angel Moroni showing up to him and telling him where the plates were, which, if we remember from his folklore, he was looking for a treasure angel to show up on that night, because he was looking for treasure, and he went to bed expecting to see a treasure angel, and of course he saw an angel. And this seems to be the story that all of his family members know about.
And there's a specific date for that too. We have no date for the first vision. It's extremely nebulous, but in this we know it's the equinox. It's 23. Somebody brought up, sometimes they wonder, is it Moroni or Nephi? Some scribes have made of questions. So, but the date was for sure known, and he was definitely telling that story around. But the other ones seem to have evolved later. So very interesting about Lucy Mack.
Yeah, and if we go to the next slide, it's interesting. The book that she wrote, History of Joseph Smith, his mother, is what happened was she wrote the manuscript. It went to England, and Brigham Young said, "This is full of lies. This isn't the true history of our church." And he required every member that had the book to turn it into their bishop or to mail it back directly to him, so that they could
destroy it and read it correctly.
So they destroyed the book. And it says, I'm going to the second paragraph here. Brigham Young knew that there were details in Lucy's manuscript that he didn't want to be available. In a journal entry on this subject, Wilford Woodruff stated Brigham Young's intent. He said he wished us to take up that work and revise it, correct it, that it belonged to the historian to attend to it, that there was many false statements made in it, and he wished them to be left out, and all other statements which we did not know to be true, and give the reason why they are left out. You can actually go to Signature Books, and there's a link there, and you can compare the side-by-side of Lucy's original manuscript versus the one that was released later in like 1850-something, I think. Lucy's history was first published by Orson Pratt in England in 1853. I think it was like 1857 was the second printing. And that's the version I read that had the first vision from 1838 in there. And I'm going, why isn't his mother telling the story? Well, the reason is because the story she told isn't consistent with the other stories of the church. But that's not all. Let's go to the next one. We have Joseph.
Can I bring up one thing very quickly? Absolutely. I'm seeing in the chat that Dan Vogel, our resident expert, I love how RFM says he feels safer with Dan in the chat.
I do too.
Confidence, RFM, but I do too. You know, there's a lot to wade through here. But Dan Vogel says Lucy Smith didn't say anything about the first vision. It was Martha Carey added it to the Joseph Smith history in the Times and Seasons. So that's something to take into consideration.
That's one of the historian books on Lucy Mack Smith that I've been looking into.
Nope, absolutely. So thank you for that.
You've got the mother who was there to console him when everyone was making fun of him and ridiculing him when he told his vision, and she seems to know nothing about the first vision.
Right.
Yeah.
The mother's always the last to know.
Yeah.
So Joseph William Smith then gives us an account. He says at length, he determined to call upon the Lord until he should get a manifestation from him. He accordingly went out into the woods and falling upon his knees, called for a long time upon the Lord for wisdom and knowledge. While engaged in prayer, a light appeared in the heavens and descended until it rested upon the trees where he was. It appeared like fire, but to his great astonishment did not burn the trees. An angel then appeared to him and conversed with him upon many things. He told him that none of the sects were right, but that if he was faithful in keeping the commandments, he would receive the true way should be made known unto him, that his sins were forgiven, etc. So this seems to match the 1835 account where fire comes down and everything else. But again, it's an angel now. It's not God and Jesus. It's an angel. And William was the patriarch of the church after Joseph Smith Sr. died. He was a horrible person, but
he beat up Joseph Smith.
He beat up Joseph Smith. He deflowered many women. He was quite a guy.
Hey, hold on now. He was just following the oath and covenant of the priesthood of polygamy. He said so. So
probably true. This was a later recollection, I believe. It wasn't concurrent.
Right.
But it's funny because the church will always say, well, this was a late recollection, so we can't really rely on it. But Joseph Smith's recollection was 22 years old when it was printed and 18 years old when it was written down. But they don't. Evidently, 18 years is within the margin of error.
Right.
But, anything longer than that is not. But again, we hear an angel. We consistently hear angel, 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 angel. We do not hear God and Jesus Christ whenever we hear about the first vision. It gets a little worse. What do the prophets say about the first vision? Well, here's what Brigham Young has to say in the Journal of Discourses. The messenger did not come to an eminent divine of any of the so-called orthodoxy. He did not adopt their interpretations of the Holy Scriptures. The Lord did not come with the armies of heaven, although one of the visions he did say he came with angels, in power and great glory, nor send his messengers, panoploid, I don't know how to say that word, with aught else than the truth of heaven to communicate to me. How is it? Panoploid?
It's called, he did not send his messengers panoplied with aught else than the truth of heaven, whatever the hell
that means, to communicate to the meek, the lowly, and the youth of humble origin, the sincere inquirer after the knowledge of God. But he did send his angel to the same obscure person, Joseph Smith Jr., who afterwards became a prophet, seer, and revelator, and informed him that he should not join any of the religious sects of the day, for they were all wrong. Again, it's an angel. Brigham Young, Dan, unless something else has been, we couldn't find anywhere where Brigham Young had ever talked about the first vision with God and Jesus Christ both being in the vision. John Taylor here, just as it was when the prophet Joseph asked the angel which of the sects was right, that he might join it. The answer was that none of them are right. What? None of them? No, we will not stop to argue the question. The angel merely told him to join none of them, that none of them were right. Again, an angel. We don't hear about God and Jesus Christ. That's pretty disturbing. That nobody who was around at the time seems to know anything, even though this was published in 1842. Brigham Young doesn't seem to buy into it. John Taylor doesn't seem to buy into it. Again, it's not until 1900 whatever that this happened. And it, some of the theories of this is that when polygamy went away, the church had to have a way to differentiate itself. And so it went away from polygamy and went towards this notion of deity. And that's why in 1888, in the historical record that Sandra Tanner's aunt found, it didn't bother the historian that it was one personage, because that wasn't common knowledge that there was multiple people. And then somebody told him, hey, no, we got to fix this. We're going with this two-personage narrative. You got to change the historical record to reflect two people, not one. So you want to go to our next slide there?
By the way, Dan Vogel says, I have no idea what Brigham Young was thinking. None of us do. So it's all good, Dan. We're right there with you.
That's funny.
Here you go.
You can read that one, Landon.
Okay. Why haven't I mentioned any vision before? Well, I'm mentioning it now. Don't be such a hater.
That's right. I'm mentioning it now.
Anyone who's done this podcast, they know that as soon as you've said something like this, everyone comes out and says you're such a hater because you're
such a hater.
Pointing out the history of the church, but you're a hater for doing so.
Why do you hate us?
Clown. We get called clowns a lot, which is funny to me.
Right. Well, I mean, the prophet called us lazy learners, and that didn't stick. So
that's right. It's all about ad hominem, and that's fine.
Listen, clowns are heroes. That's why circuses are so popular and famous with kids. So I don't mind being a clown because it makes people laugh instead of a prophet that makes you cry. So
there you go. Make them laugh.
Make them laugh.
All right. What do we have next? Make them laugh. That's right.
Okay.
Oh, this part is funny.
We're going to the arguments. You want to? Can you read that one?
I have it. Yeah.
Again, this
I
is
can
the
read
essay.
it.
We're going back to the essay.
Back to the essay. And so, of course, they're going to let all the readers of the essay know that, oh, there are some silly arguments by some people out there. Of course, they're not going to mention the real arguments. They're going to mention some very light arguments that they can easily spin. So, arguments regarding the accounts of Joseph Smith's first vision. The variety and number of accounts of the first vision have led some critics or reasonable people to question whether Joseph Smith's descriptions match the reality of his experience. Two arguments are frequently made against his credibility. The first questions Joseph Smith's memory of the events, and the second questions whether he embellished elements of the story over time. So the only arguments that they're going to address are his memory and his embellishment, which, as we all know, there are many, many other arguments, but this is what they're choosing to talk about.
Yeah, they're not going to talk about the multiple visions of other people. They're not going to talk about, the late dates that he wrote,
or that no family members knew anything,
no family members, or any of the differences in the narratives. So the first thing they say is memory, and of course we all know. Oh well, of course people forget things. We've all been there, It's obvious over time you'd forget a few of the details. The problem is Joseph's narratives get more detailed the further away they get. Carrie, do you want to read what their statement is on memory?
Yeah. Oh, give me the one with the small print.
Yeah, that's really small.
It's all good. I got it.
We like to look up your nostril. That's why we do it.
One argument regarding the accounts of Joseph Smith's first vision alleges that historical evidence does not support Joseph Smith's description of religious revival in Palmyra, New York, and its vicinity in 1820. Some argue that this undermines both Joseph's claim of unusual religious fervor and the account of the vision itself. Documentary evidence, however, supports Joseph Smith's statements regarding the revivals, in 1824. The region where he lived became famous for its religious fervor and was unquestionably one of the hotbeds of religious revivals. Historians refer to the region as the burned over district because preachers wore out the land, holding camp revivals and seeking converts during the early 1800s. In June 1818, for example, a Methodist camp meeting took place in Palmyra, and the following summer, Methodists assembled again at Vienna, now Phelps, New York, 15 miles from the Smith family farm. The journals of an itinerant Methodist preacher document much religious excitement in Joseph's geographic area in 1819 and 1820. They report that Reverend George Lane, a revivalist Methodist minister, was in that region in both years, speaking on God's method in bringing about reformations. So this historical evidence is consistent with Joseph's description. Anytime you hear this church start talking about consistency, look that stuff up.
Weasel word.
Yeah. And he said that the unusual religious excitement in his district or region commenced with the Methodists. Indeed, Joseph stated that he became somewhat partial to Methodism. So refute that, you critics. Landon, Rebecca, refute that.
Well,
it's very hard to refute unless you actually study.
No, we're lazy.
When this argument came up that there were no revivals in Palmyra, what they did is they went to the newspapers in the area, and every time there was a revival, they would report it in the newspaper, and they couldn't find any revivals happening. They went to the church records of all the different churches. None of them reported these revivals. It wasn't until 1824 that we really saw the fervor happening. Now, the church claims they found one in 1819, 1820. I think it was, they say, in Joseph's geographic region. I don't know how far out.
The United States.
Yeah. We don't know if this is the Heartland model of
revivalism or the Meso model of revision. We don't know. But the evidence was clear in 1824. There were church records where they reported, oh my gosh, 99 people joined, in the last couple of months. And there were newspaper articles about, this gathering and that gathering. So nothing, crickets really prior to that, but definite evidence of these revivals starting in 1824.
But you see that the church wants to, do a sleight of hand. Oh no, the revivals, we're looking where we can find one. They actually sent 40 scholars to go try to find a revival somewhere in New York, where he talked about all of these revivals, and they come back with one in the area that they say. But we know it wasn't until 1824 that the churches actually, that in 1820, the numbers actually were declining in the churches in Palmyra. It wasn't until 1824 that there was a big, uptick in people joining the church, these other churches. The thing is, though, what did they not discuss here? They didn't mention his memory about one person or two persons that he saw. They don't mention his memory of whether he was 14 years or 16 years old. They don't mention his memory of what year was this that this happened. And we actually we talked about this. And if you go to the next slide,
please don't.
This is 6-year-old Rebecca.
I told everybody I was homemade clothes, homemade haircut. I told everybody I was raised very Orthodox.
I love it.
But no, Landon and I started talking about, what do you remember in the past that was important? Because apparently, the vision was the most important thing that ever happened to Joseph. He saw God and the Father. So I started thinking back. I'm like, what do I remember? I said, okay, I remember being 6 years old and President Nixon came to visit my hometown because my dad worked in the nuclear power industry. So I remember driving out there. I remember being on my dad's shoulders as he held me up. I remember President Nixon getting out of a helicopter. I remember security guards and speeches, and I'm 6. So I thought, okay, what kind of memory is that? I went to the paper. There it is. 1971.
You even said it was.
I even said it was in the fall. I said I remember it was cold. It was in the fall. Yeah. So this was really important to me. Kind of a major event. A president came to visit, my hometown when I was 6, and I did pretty well. I didn't say one president opened the door and then another president came out, and I just called them both president. I didn't say that. I knew there was only one, but everybody needs to think, what do you remember?
And how well do you wasn't an angel.
He wasn't. Well, there is that. I am not an angel.
I am not an angel.
I am not God.
Nixon. They were so sad when everything went down with Nixon. Yeah, I don't know how this is morphing into Nixon. But again, you remember details of things that are very important, and seeing God and the Father, pretty supposedly, aside from the atonement, the most important thing to ever happen in the world. And didn't remember, changed the story, and didn't mention it for decades. So interesting.
Nor did any newspaper cover this event that he claims he told everybody about. It's recorded nowhere. Most important event in the history of mankind, next to the atonement itself. And they can't even tell us what year. They can't tell us what month it happened in. They only can say the spring of 1820 is when it happened, because he seems to have no recollection of that. So, okay, we're going on to embellishment, trying to finish this up at a reasonable time here.
Yeah, we're almost done here.
Always reasonable. You want me to read it? It's pretty small.
Yeah,
well, it's pretty small. You can do it, Carrie.
Continue to torture me. You just like counting my nose hairs. Okay. The second argument frequently made regarding the accounts of Joseph Smith's first vision is that he embellished his story over time. So this argument focuses on two details: the number and identity of the heavenly beings Joseph Smith stated that he saw, and Joseph's first vision accounts described the heavenly beings with greater detail over time. The 1832 account says, "The Lord opened the heavens up unto me, and I saw the Lord." His 1838 account states, "I saw two personages, one of whom introduced the other as my beloved son." As a result, critics have argued that Joseph Smith started out reporting to have seen one being, the Lord, and ended up claiming to have seen both, the Father and the Son. And we have beautiful evidence from Joseph Fielding Smith that is precisely how he understood it also.
Correct.
So that's me, not this article. So
right.
There are other and more consistent ways of seeing the evidence. Here we go. Remember,
this is consistent way of
they use that word
consistently. Use the word consistent.
Yeah, they consistently Yeah, be on our guard. No more lazy learning here. So there's consistent ways of seeing the evidence. So a basic harmony in the narrative across time must be acknowledged at the outset. 3 of the 4 accounts clearly state that 2 personages appeared to Joseph Smith in the first vision, as if that avoids the contradiction.
Yes.
That's a ridiculously stupid point.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry. Okay, that's me, not the... Okay, so the outlier is Joseph Smith's 1832 account, the one he wrote.
The one he wrote personally.
Yes.
The only one written by the person who experienced it. Yes.
The one that Joseph Fielding Smith lamely cut out.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so, and this can be read to refer... What? Which can be read to, to 1 or 2 personages as landed. Yeah.
Exactly. The plural Lord.
Yeah, the plural Lord. Yes. The plural majesty. But the 1832 account does. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping. Boy, talk about. I need to hear someone.
I actually have it printed out. Do you want me to read it?
If read to refer to, I'll finish this paragraph, then you take over.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
If read to refer to one heavenly being, the Lord, it would likely be the personage who forgave his sins. According to later accounts, the first divine personage told Joseph Smith to hear the second, Jesus Christ, who then delivered the main message, which included the message of forgiveness. So Joseph Smith's 1832 account then may have concentrated on Jesus Christ, the bearer of forgiveness, and the only one who showed up. Oh, sorry.
That's right. That's a nice way to spin it. So then they go on to say another way of reading, because they're going to tell you how else you might be able to wrap your brain around this. Another way of reading the 1832 account is that Joseph Smith referred to 2 beings, both of whom he called Lord. The embellishment argument hinges on the assumption that the 1832 account describes the appearance of only one divine being. But the 1832 account does not say that only one being appeared. Literally, right there. Come on. Come on. I'm sorry.
I did not have sex with that one.
That is what I feel like I am reading here. That's why this essay just got me so much.
Lie about it. You know, wow.
Exactly. Okay. But the 1832 account does not say that only one being appeared. Note that the 2 references to Lord are separated in time. First, the Lord opens the heavens. Then Joseph Smith sees the Lord. This reading of the account is consistent with Joseph's 1835 account, which has one personage appearing first, followed by another soon after. The 1832 account then can reasonably be read
by what reasonable person? I don't know.
Any reasonable person I cannot even picture on the planet. It can reasonably be read to mean that Joseph Smith saw one being who then revealed another, and that he referred to both of them as the Lord in a singular. The Lord opened the heavens upon me, and I saw the Lord. So that's 2 people.
Clearly, what was I thinking?
Clearly, what was I thinking? Okay, do I have one more paragraph? I can't even see
one more
there. Yes, okay.
paragraph.
Joseph's increasingly specific descriptions can thus be compellingly read as evidence of increasing insight accumulating over time based on experience. In part, the differences between the 1832 account and the later accounts may have something to do with the differences between the written and spoken word. Here's where we're going to find out that Joseph really struggled with writing anything, and this explains a whole lot. The 1832 account represents the first time that Joseph Smith attempted to write down his history. That same year, he wrote a friend, which is very strange. He's writing someone to tell them how he can't write. Wrap your brain around that. That same year, he wrote a friend that he felt imprisoned by paper, pen, and ink, and a crooked, broken, scattered, imperfect language. He called the written word a little narrow prison. The expansiveness of the latter accounts is more easily understood and even expected when we recognize that they were likely dictated accounts, verbal accounts, an easy, comfortable medium for Joseph Smith, and one that allowed the words to flow more easily. That explains it all.
Yeah, he he has a hard time writing and expressing himself, and that's the reason that this was a poor example. Dan Vogel,
that's why there's only 29 volumes of 900 pages each of the Joseph Smith papers, because he didn't.
That's his narrow prison. Yeah, that's his narrow prison.
Dan Vogel said something that was interesting. It's gone off the page now, but he said that Joseph Smith, the 1832 count, doesn't say that a personage opened the heaven. I'm not exactly sure. He said the Lord opened the heavens. He didn't say that, somebody actually opened them, but that the Lord opened the heavens. And I'm guessing that's what he means. If not, there might be more to this that we don't know that Dan's bringing up. But
right.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily say one personage opened the heaven and then another personage appeared. He said the Lord opened the heavens. So it could have been just by his power that he opened the heavens so that he could be seen. So again, they're making a jump to that. But
no, they wouldn't.
That, to me, the embellishment argument actually goes to the church, and the embellishment award goes to the church for their fine embellishment of one person becoming two persons, so that it's consistent with what he taught somewhere else. In every case, Joseph Smith could not be wrong. Therefore, we're going to take the current thing and we're going to make an argument that works to make that become true, rather than look and say, why would he have changed it over time? They're going to make you do all these mental gymnastics and, put your legs up over your head and all of this to make the Lord mean plural.
Oh, no. Now Carrie's going to try it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
So, yeah.
Radio Free Mormon says, so whenever a story gets more elaborate over time, it proves it's true.
Right.
Absolutely.
There you have it.
There you
go.
go.
And the essay is crafted with all of its adjectives to make you sound like you're unreasonable if you see a problem with what they're saying, and that you're, of course, reasonable, intelligent, you get it. You just see it the way that they're saying it. Yeah. And consistent. You're a critic. You're not thinking clearly. You're not reasonable if you find a problem with what they're saying. So right there, they're leading you down that path to accept this explanation.
Yes. And I have a perfect cure for that. And I've learned this through my consistent experience. I have learned to just simply say, bullshit.
Wow,
I feel terrible about this, but I will get over it.
There it is. Right, that was very consistent.
The next slide is the conclusion, Carrie. And
that must mean I'm true.
The next slide is the conclusion. I don't want to read. We're not going to read this because it's the standard church. There's no way that we could ever know other than praying and getting a feeling that it's true and seek after God. And
well, it does say neither the truth of the first vision nor the arguments against it can be proven by historical research alone. So that's finally the takeaway. There, you cannot know this, right?
They say about the Book of Mormon, the Book of Abraham, the Kinderhook plates, the Melchizedek priesthood. So flippin' what? We're not out to prove anything false. We're asking, why are you so inconsistent, and ignore the contrary evidence?
Well, we want to go and ask ourselves some questions, and that's the next slide here. This is our last slide. And
how can I read?
They only gave us 2 arguments, right? And we feel there are way more than 2 arguments. They're just questions that you could ask yourself when you're thinking about the first vision accounts. So we thought these were good.
Tell us those, Rebecca.
I can't read.
You can't read them. Okay, I'll read
them. I can see the picture.
Okay. So ask yourself this: why didn't Joseph Smith write the official version of the first vision rather than have a dictated to a scribe? 2, if the official first vision story was so important, why did it go unpublished until 1842? 3, if Jesus Christ and God the Father really told Joseph Smith in 1820 that all churches were an abomination, then why did he try joining the Methodist Church in June of 1828? We read all those different articles where they kept telling him not to join any church. They re-emphasized it over and over, and yet he joined a church. He seems to have completely ignored what he was told by God.
Well, wouldn't you?
Well, I clearly have, because I've left the church, which I was told not to do.
Oh gosh, that's not consistent.
If Joseph Smith saw God in 1820, why did he pray in his room in 1823 to find out if a supreme being did exist? And that was, before the angel Moroni shows up. 5, why did Joseph Smith fail to mention his first vision when he first wrote a church history in 1835? 6, if Joseph Smith could not deny that he saw God, then why did his own handwritten account deny it? Because he didn't say he saw God. He said he saw one angel. If Joseph Smith's first vision was the most important historical event since the atonement, then why didn't early church members know about it?
Well, it was more important for us.
He was saving it for the latter days. It's the ongoing restoration.
It's for us Saturday warriors only.
If it didn't really happen, why couldn't Joseph Smith tell a consistent story about such a powerful experience as meeting with God and Jesus Christ face to face? Why does the official first vision story contradict Joseph Smith's own handwritten testimony? If Joseph Smith saw God the Father in the flesh with a body in 1820, why did he teach later then God the Father did not have a physical body?
In the lectures on faith.
And in the Book of Mormon, we see some indications of that too.
Yeah.
Why did Joseph Smith's mother, in the extensive history of her son's life, not mention Joseph ever having a vision from God and Jesus Christ, or that he was persecuted for it? And one that's not here is, why did Joseph Fielding Smith cut it out of the book and not share it with anybody for 40 years if it was so important?
That is not testimony action right there.
So we'll close this with Rebecca and her final.
Is Rebecca gonna sing?
No. Oh no! It was bad enough that Landon made me put up a picture of me as a 6-year-old. I'm not gonna sing.
You did not want to give that up. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have any teeth, and it was what it was. It's okay.
It's all good.
It's all good.
Go to the last slide here.
Oh, and you're gonna have to read it, Landon, because again.
Oh, I thought it was big enough for you. Okay.
It's not. And you know what? I should explain this to people when I say about reading. So I have contacts. Like I have super far. It's my close vision that's really hard to. Yeah, and my screen it's like this big. I need a new screen because it makes me look. I don't know.
Monitor.
We need to invest. That's right.
He says, I base my whole testimony on the account of the first vision. Which account? There are multiple conflicting versions. Well, I know that now.
I know that now.
How many of us felt that way? Now I know. I didn't know.
I know. It's a big issue. Yeah, it really
they're
is.
They're saying now, sing praise to the man. Well, based on what we've said, here's how I would sing it now. Praise to the man who communed with Jehovah and the Father and the angels and those other beings.
I would sing it, praise to the man who did not commune with Jehovah, because I think it's pretty clear he never had this vision in the first place. Again, just another thing that he added and built up over time as he had to survive as a leader in the church. That's what he did.
So this conniving and jiving for consistency on Joseph Smith's part is all ego-based, is all ego-driven. I mean, that's the impression that we're left with. It was when he was getting in trouble with his credibility based on truly, I mean, let's face it, the man, for all his inspiration and revelation, made some really stupid decisions. Let me go screw this young little girl in the barn. Come on, Joe, really, you idiot. Let me go ahead and promise everybody lots and lots and lots of money and then cheat the hell out of them, and everybody loses their money in Kirtland. It goes on. Let me prophesy that we will take back our land of inheritance, and then it's a complete flop. I mean, on and on and on. And he never quit. The remarkable thing is he never quit making really dumb choices
Well, right up till he burned the Nauvoo expositor.
Right up to that time. When you really take a step back and look at it, you go, wow, that is how a con man would have gotten away with it, but not a prophet. Prophets wouldn't have made those kind of choices if they were inspired. So, I mean, it's really remarkable. Once we have Russell M. Nelson to thank for calling us the lazy learners, so that we finally stopped being lazy learners and have discovered multiple First Vision accounts like you guys. Yeah, right? Fun stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So would you guys like to bear your non-testimony? Shall we have a closing prayer?
I think I've said enough.
I think we do that too often. We've said it all. I think we should announce what we're talking about next time. I think do you know what the next essay is?
Oh, and not only that, Rebecca, I'm going to be speaking at the Thrive in September, in September 16th. We forgot to announce that in the opening.
We did. Are you ready to go to announcements now, Carrie? Just like at a church meeting? Is that what we're doing?
Well, brothers and sisters, if you would all show us your appreciation by the raising of the right hand. Yes, we now have Sister Rebecca Biblioteca giving us.
I have the announcement. Yeah, so next time when we gather for this Gospel Topics essay series, we're going to be talking about, and I don't have the title of the essay because I'm just going out of the book, but it's about frontier violence and violence in Mormonism. And yeah, it's going to be a good
Meadows Massacre stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Right about the time of the Mountain Meadows Massacre, which I can even announce this. So our book club and Mormon-ish, we are inviting anybody that wants to come down to the massacre site with us. Find your way down to St. George on September the 9th. That's a Saturday. We're going to take a whole tour with Barbara Brown and Richard Turley, and we are going to check out the site. So anybody's invited. Just find your way down there and come join us in the afternoon on that day, September 9th. So anyway, other announcements are there's Vintage Thrive coming up on Saturday, September 16th. And Carrie is going to be one of the speakers and one of the discussion leaders. I get to MC. It's always flattering to be asked to speak and MC at Vintage Thrive. But anybody can sort of self-identify as vintage. I would say the way to tell if it's for you is if you know how to operate a rotary phone. I think that might be something that lets you know you can probably feel comfortable at Vintage Thrive.
Or if you watch Backyard Professor, you probably qualify.
Yeah, or if you're here in this audience, you're probably Vintage Thrive. That's right.
I'm antique enough. I remember using Morse code.
Oh yeah, no, it's true. But it's going to be a day for maybe like second half of lifers. It's going to be in Provo at the Provo Town Center, the mall at the Reserve. It's a kind of reception center there within the mall. It's on the 16th of September, Saturday. It starts at 10 a.m. You can go to Thrive Beyond Religion to get your tickets. There's going to be like a band and lunch and dinner are served. It's going to be a whole day. It's going to be really fun. So anybody can message me if they want more information or just go over to Thrive Beyond Religion. But as I said, our beloved Carrie is going to be there leading discussions and hobnobbing with the common people. It's going to be a really fun day.
We're all common people at Thrive. That's what makes us thrive.
That's right. That's right.
We don't have this patriarchal hierarchy thing. Awesome.
Yep, all good.
Do you have any other announcements?
Nothing else. Nope. I'm just carrying water at the Senior Thrive. So.
That's right. Landon will be there, and as a younger person, and he'll be supplying all the rest of us water who are
That's
older.
Right.
So we don't...
I wasn't even old enough to get in, but they lowered the age a little bit.
Again, thank you so much for pointing that out, Landon.
After lucky. The old fogey's got to do something significant in our second half.
Oh, funny. Gene Judson just said, I'm on my third half of life. So I agree. That's awesome.
Gene Judson always has great comments. Hey, Gene, how you doing, Bubba?
Yeah, he's great.
Guy. He's awesome. Yeah, I would skip seconds and go for thirds too. Okay, well, who has the closing hymn? Oh, no, we're staying.
I attended an LDS Sacrament meeting today to see a family member giving a talk. I haven't probably been to one for about a year and a half, and it was really interesting. So it was interesting to be there. I had to put on a sweater So, you know, that was part of it because I had to, you know, can't do that. But yeah, it was interesting to attend.
Moksha Raver says senior thrive. Yeah. Hey, I love you too, Gene.
Don't use the word senior, vintage.
Yeah, vintage. Come on. Give us old farts a break. I mean, us vintage people a break.
That's right.
The coolest thing I did after I turned 50, you guys, was it finally dawned on me, you know, I really am 50 and I don't have to act like I'm 29 anymore. Yeah. I mean, I can let the actual, for real, the actual young 29-year-old tough guys pick up the 50-pound bags of concrete now and stuff like that. And my life just became golden wonderful. When I started quit acting macho and just became macho at 50. Hey, a guy can dream, whatever.
It's 8 o'clock here, so I'm ready for bed. So.
Oh, holy
right. It's vintage bedtime right now.
It's vintage. Shut the hell up, BYP, and get off this. All right. Thank you, too. I always love doing these programs with you guys. You're just beyond spectacular. Don't let that swell your fat heads either, because I want you back for a whole lot more. We've got a whole lot more on these church essays, and then we're working on other things to where we will never stop entertaining you for the rest of our lives over the course of the next 219 years. We've written it in blood. We've signed a contract. We're going to stick around just for our beloved audience. So, all right, you guys, if you don't have anything else, I don't have anything else other than thank you so much for all of your love and support, and I love you too also. Thanks for being on my show again, and we're going to do it again and again and again and again and again and again. Praise to the professors who keep showing up online.
Do you know how to turn this off, Landon? I think we might want to